We're going to solve rational equations now. You've spent the week and a little bit of last week multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting. So now you're going to start solving them, and this is not as hard as adding or subtracting. So it's kind of the same because you have to get a common denominator. But once you get that common denominator, you're kind of done with it and you don't have to really reduce. So if we look at this very first one, we need to find the common denominator. And let me start with number two because it's a little bit easier. What would be your common denominator on number two? What two parts do I need? What two things? What number do I need? Everything has to have a 4 and everything has to have a what? An X. This one has both, so I don't have to do anything with that. What do these two need? So I'm going to give them a 4 on the bottom and a 4 on the top. Now I have my common denominator. So once you have your common denominator, guys, you just mark it out. And you're solving the equation that's on the top. So the equation that we're going to solve is 4 times 2 is 8 equals 4 times 1 is 4 plus x minus 3. How do I solve this? It's regular from now. So like math 1 stuff. What do I do now?
Combine the 4 and the -3.
So I get 8 equals 1 plus x. How do I solve? Subtract 1. Perfect. Both. And we get 7. The only other thing you need to do is make sure that that 7 doesn't cause a 0 in the denominator. So if our denominator, remember we talked about that, we set it equal to 0. As long as we don't get 0 here, this is our answer, okay? You don't have to check it like this, but if I plug that in, 4 times 7 is 28. This is positive 7, positive 7. As long as it's not a 0, we're okay. All right, so always check that denominator. All right, so let's look at the next one. Or go back to number 1. What's our common denominator here? What number would be our common denominator? What number?
6.
6, because I can make 2 look like 6, right? So 6 is a common denominator. How many A's should I have for all of them to have the same amount?
2.
So my common denominator, I'm just going to write it to the side, is 6A squared. How do I make this 6A squared, this first one? What does it need? What's that mean? It needs an A. It needs another A. So it needs 2A. So I'm going to multiply this by A, multiply this by A, and that gets my common denominator. I don't need that denominator anymore. This one has it. It's good to go, so I can just mark it out. It's fine. How can I get 2A to look like 6A squared? Multiply it by 3A. What I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. That'll get my 6A squared. I do not need my denominator anymore. So on the top, 1 times A is A equals to 1 minus 1 times 3A or minus 3A. Is everybody okay with that? So once you get your common denominator, that's the hard part. Everything else is super easy. Okay. How do I solve this?
Add 3A.
Yeah, add 3A, get your A's on the same side. I get 4A equals 1. How do I solve? Divide by 4. I get that A equals 1/4, but I need to be careful. I want to make sure it doesn't give me a 0 in the denominator. It will not. So this is my final answer. So that part where it says check for extraneous solutions, that's what we're doing, is making sure that that answer actually works in the problem. All right. What's my common denominator for number 3? N squared. So what does the first one need? An N. So what I do to the bottom, I have to do the top. And then our denominator is done. What's the second one need? And that gives me the N squared I need. What does the third one need? Kind of a trick question. Nothing. Doesn't need anything. So we're done with that. Solve your equation. N times 1 is N. Minus 2 times N is 2N. Is equal to, I didn't do anything to the other side, 2N plus 4. All right. How do I solve?
Subtract 2N.
This way? Is this what you're telling me? Move this 2N?
Yes.
Okay. I would probably put these together first before I moved them, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do. Okay. I can do all of it at the same time if you'll watch carefully and listen. I have 1 minus 2 minus 2. 1 minus 2 is what?
-1,
-1 minus 2 is?
-3.
Good. So I did it all at one time. You can do it separate or all at the same time. I don't care, y'all. I don't care. How do I solve? Divide -3. I get n equals -4/3. If I plug that back into my denominator, I do not get a 0. So we're good. And again, the reason that we're making sure it's not equal to 0 is because we can't divide by 0. So we don't want anything that'll put a 0 in the denominator. All right, so this one looks a little different. And what I would suggest that you do is anything that you factor, go ahead, you can factor, go ahead and factor. So like these, even though they're common denominators, I can take out an x. And the reason that I want to do this is because now I have two parts. I have an x, and then I have x plus 6. In the second one, I have x, and I have x plus 6. But in the last one, I only have x. What other part do I need? The x plus 6. So it helps you see it a little better with your common denominator. Now that I have that common denominator, I do not need it anymore, so I can get rid of it and solve the equation that's on the top. So I get 2 equals 1 plus, and I can go ahead and distribute right here. There's not much to distribute because it's a 1, but if you had like a 2, 3, 4, go ahead and distribute it there. 1 times x is x. 1 times 6 is 6. Clean it up by adding like terms. 2 equals 7 plus x. Subtract your 7. And you get x equals -5. If I plug -5 back in, there is nowhere that it will give me 0. So we are good to go. I don't know if any of these right now will give you extraneous solutions. I think they happen whenever you have to factor. Okay, so I think if it's just one answer, it's okay, but we'll check it out. All right, look at your next one. How can I factor b squared plus 3b minus 18? What are your factors of -18 that add to 3?
6 and -3.
So this one has a b plus 6 and a b minus 3. This one's going to be the same way, b plus 6, b minus 3. But this one only has the b plus 6, so what does it need? What I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Your denominator does not matter anymore. Solve the equation on the top. 8 equals, like I said, you can go ahead and distribute right here while you're writing it down. 3 times b is 3b. 3 times -3 is -9. Be careful because it's a -5. -9 minus 5.
-14.
How do I solve? Add 14. I get 22 equals 3b. How do I solve? Divide 3. Is everybody okay? And b equals 22 over 3. Everything's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect numbers. It's okay. If I plug these back in, they do not give me 0. So I'm good to go. And again, we're plugging them into the denominator. 22 over 3 is 7 point something. 7 plus 6 is 13. 7 minus 3 is 4. So there's nowhere that it's going to give you 0. All right, what do I need to do on number 6?
Take out a v.
Leaves me with b plus 2. This one is the same way. So what does that mean my third one needs? It needs just the v. So what I do to the bottom, I have to do the top. And then our denominators don't matter. I get 8 equals 1 minus 1 times v is v. How do I solve? Subtract 1. I get 7 equals -v. Divide by -1 or just change the sign. So I get v equals -7. Nowhere that I plug that in, -7 is -7. -7 plus 2 is -5. No zeros. There are no zeros. Any questions? Okay, the only way, again, that it gets harder is if it makes you have to factor in that solving. So that's as hard as it gets. So as long as you know how to factor, you're good to go. Okay. Look at number 7. What's your common denominator? R minus 5. The first one is the only one that doesn't have it. Sorry, writing it really tiny right there. Everything else has it, so we're good to go with everything else. Distribute 1 times R is 1R. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. Keep writing, plus 1 equals 7. Negative 5 plus 1. Negative 4 equals 7. How do I solve? I get R equals 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 will not cause a hole in the bottom or an extraneous solution. 11 minus 5 is 6, not 0. All right. Be careful on number 8. Be careful on number 8. So number 8, I have an n plus 2. I have 1 factor of n plus 2. Remember, n squared is 2 n's. Okay. And then I have this n squared plus n where I can factor out 1 n. And it leaves me with n plus 2. So what is my common denominator? Give me one part of your common denominator.
N.
Is it just n? N plus 2 is one part. So we got this part. How many n's do we need for it to be common? 2, since this one, whatever the highest number is, because this one has 2, they all need to have 2. Has everybody got it? Always the highest number. So this first one, here's your common denominator, n squared, n plus 2. What does the first one need? It has n plus 2. What does it need?
Another n.
It needs the full n squared, this whole part right here. So here's one part, here's the other part, okay? The next one has the n squared. What does it need? Yeah, be careful when you multiply this out. And then the last one has 1 n and an n plus 2. So what does it need? Another n. Denominators are gone. 1 times n squared is n squared. Remember, we have to double distribute this. N times n. Sorry, that should be equals. Is n squared. N times 2 is 2n. 1 times n is 1n or just n. And 1 times 2 is 2. Don't forget the rest of your problem, plus 1 times n is n. Clean it up. This side is just n squared. This side is n squared plus 2, 3, 4n plus 2. How do I solve? Since they're the same on the left and right, they're going to cancel out, and I get 0 equals 4n plus 2. How do I solve this? Subtract 2. I get negative 2 equals 4n. How do I solve? Come on, guys. Divide by 4. And I get n equals negative 1/2. When I plug it back in, it does not give me a 0. All right. Everybody good? 2 more, and then you can take your quiz. What's my common denominator on this one?
V squared plus 5v.
Yep, the other 2 have it. This one needs it. Be careful with the -1, okay? So this is a -1. Denominators are not needed anymore. 1 distribute a -1. -1 times v squared is negative v squared. -1 times 5v is negative 5v. Since I have v squared and v, I need to get everything on one side. So I'm going to put it in order as I do this. I'm going to subtract 5, but I'm going to put it in order. Okay, so I have a negative v squared, a negative 5v, and 1 minus 5 is -4. What's wrong with this? I'm okay with it equaling 0. There's a negative part. We don't ever want to lead with a negative when we're trying to factor, so I can factor that -1 out, which leaves me with v squared plus 5v plus 4. And then we can divide by that -1 and it goes away. Okay, so it goes away. Do I have factors of 4 that add to 5? 4 and 1. So this is where I said it might get a little bit harder, but it's as easy as like factoring. So this is like the hardest problem we've done. What are your two solutions?
-4 and -1.
You want to plug it back in and make sure that it's okay. -4 squared is 16 plus 5 times -4 is -20. It doesn't give me 0, so it's okay. Plug in -1. -1 squared is 1 plus 5 times -1 is -4. We're good. It doesn't give us 0. Is everybody good? So both of these actually work. No extraneous solutions on this one. All right. Last one. What do I need to do?
Factor.
Huh? I can pull out a GCF of x on this one, which gives me x and x plus 1. This one only has x, so what does it need? X plus 1. Okay, again, watch the minus when we get there. Watch the minus when we get there. I'm going to throw this one on paper, okay? So you guys are going to look at it here so I have more room. So we have x minus 8 equals x minus 3, x plus 1. Then you have this minus, but you're subtracting the whole top. So make sure that you put the whole top in parentheses. This is the one place where people mess up. Okay. We're going to double distribute. So leave this x minus 8. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x, or just x. -3 times x is -3x. -3 times 1 is -3. Distribute your minus. That's why you have to put parentheses. Otherwise, you're going to mess up the problem. So make sure that minus is distributed. Minus x squared minus x plus 12. Clean it up. I got x minus 8 equals. I have x squared minus x squared. What happens? I have x minus 3x minus x. When I add those together, what do I get?
-3x.
Your x's will cancel out, and then you had your -3x. I'm done with that. So what's left is -3 plus 12. What's -3 plus 12?
9.
Positive 9. Now it's just a normal solving from here. So what do I need to do? You can, yeah, either or is fine. Some people solve different. I always move my x and I always move the smallest one. That's just what I've been conditioned to do for many years. But it doesn't matter. It all works out the same. X equals -3x plus 17. I would have added the 3x in the beginning, but you guys see that we get it in the same time. So it's not a big deal. So 4x equals 17. How do I solve? Divide.
5 by 4.
X equals 17 over 4. Not going to give you a 0 in the bottom, so you're good to go. Any questions? All right. When you look at your quiz, check out number 2 for just a minute so I can explain it to you. See how you have a 5, 2, and a 2? That's a red flag that 5 could be extraneous. So be aware of that. It's not going to be on this one, but just be aware of that, okay? So make sure that you check those solutions because you don't want to put C and it actually be D because 5 doesn't work. Okay, that is not the case in that one. I'm just letting you know. Is everybody good? Just letting you know. All right, so get to work. It's only 10 questions. It's going to be pretty much just like your notes, okay? I'm going to stop sharing, stop recording.